then that's sort of a Piper tri-gear airplane. That's a Colt, of course, not a tri-pacer. Just 2 seats in the front. You know a Colt.
Yeah, I've flown in them.
Big baggage compartment. But this one in particular was rebuilt, covered, and restored the engine and everything by a guy named Jim Murdoch, who was the chief of the FAA in Atlanta at that time. And he did that just for a home project of his own. And he was the one who licensed my fleet when Bob Russ rebuilt it, and got it. I was having John Carlovic did the engine and strength analysis of the mount strength and everything, and I got that paperwork from John, and Bob Russ did the mechanical work, and Jim Murdoch licensed it for me. Most examiners that could license airplanes at the time wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole. And I got a hold of Jim Murdoch over the phone, and he sensed my anxiety in my voice, I guess, and he said, after I talked to him a little bit, he said, "Don't worry, son. I'll license anything I can walk around and don't snag my pants." That's really exactly what he said. He was kidding, of course. Yeah. He was as good a regulation man as anybody, but he relieved my anxiety at least. And I got a license without any trouble. But he rebuilt this airplane, flew it for a while, and sold it to Albert Carlisle, who had the T-Craft. When Albert bought this, then he didn't need 2 airplanes, so he sold the T-Craft to Ronald Reed.
So now, did you own this plane?
Yes.
Okay.
Then Albert bought it and flew it.
Some of these pictures, you're going to have to say, yeah, I own this one. If you didn't own it, just skip it.
Yeah. Well, I did. Yeah.
Okay.
And Albert bought this and flew it for a while, and then Albert and JB bought a kind of a rundown 172, and overall Albert overhauled the engine himself and everything, got it in real good shape, and got the airplane painted and real nice, made it one nice 172, which was all metal and 4-place, had better than this, so Albert kept it, and I bought this. Albert stored this up at John Karlovic's in the hangar. He'd had it up there a couple of years before. I'd been talking to him down in the shop every day and trying to get him to sell it, but he wouldn't. And I finally talked him into selling it because my daughter Nancy was learning to fly about that time, and I thought it'd be a good airplane for her. And so I bought it from him and kept it for a while. We had this airplane on the Cessna 150 we bought from another friend in Oklahoma at the same time. Johnny and Nancy both were flying, so they could each have an airplane of their own.
Did all the Piper planes in that era, basically the Super Cub and the 5, J5 and all those, did they all have the same airfoil?
Yes. So
they all probably handled similarly, huh? As far as stall characteristics and landing and stuff.
The tri-pacers in this Colt had one little different characteristic. They were what we call the short wing Pipers. There wasn't much wing. Cub had much more wing.
Yeah.
And Super Cruiser. But this is short wing Piper. And one other thing I want to tell you about this, I had a big baggage compartment. When Nancy was learning to fly, she had her daughter was, I guess, 3 or 4 about that time, not going to school. Nancy wanted to go flying. So she brought Jenny with her, gave her a blanket to sit on and a towels to play with, and Jenny was flying this Colt and taking her daughter Jenny with her and letting her play in the baggage compartment by herself while Nancy was learning to fly. All the things we went through to learn to fly, everything. Jenny just sat there and played and was happy as a bug in the rug. Never had any trouble with it. Nancy could fly and take care of her kid at the same time. Once in a while, as I remember it, she would leave Jenny with Jean at home, but not very often, just once in a while. One other thing about this Colt I want to say before I get through with it, this is not a standard Colt. This had a 135 engine, which Jim Murdoch had modified considerably. And so it was a much better Colt than a regular Colt, which had 100 horsepower.
Yeah.
That made a big difference.
30% more.
Yeah, it was a whole bunch of power. It was a good flying Colt, and pretty fast. They would do 135.
Wow.
Without any trouble, whereas a normal Colt, just like a 150, does about 100, 105,
yeah,
something like that. So it was a real good Colt. And we enjoyed flying it a great deal. And I remember it particularly because Nancy's enjoyment and all the learning she went through, but going to the airport and getting the airplane out of tie down and warming it up and flying and all that, put it back. Nancy get the tow bar and put it down. It was down a hill. It was a hill right here, the paved taxiway up here, and she had to go down the hill and put it in position. She could whip that thing around there. She was good at it. Get it tied down. I made them all do the whole job themselves so they could take care of it when they got the license.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, there's the next picture is the 150. Didn't realize they were right together. 150 is our own, and that's right next to the Colt in the previous picture on the tie down there. We kept them right together. This is a 63 150, which I bought from John McKenna, who was a friend, and when Gene and I went to Tulsa with a Jetstar, we met him there in RC, flew with him in RC, and he decided to learn to fly. So he went out and bought this 150. We went looking for it together. We found this one, and he liked it and bought it. And I liked it because 57J was the number of my Jetstar.
Oh. Huh.
JF, 57JF for Joe Freitas. That was the number of my Jetstar, so I really liked it. So when Gene and I moved back to Georgia, I called John, asked him if he wanted to sell it, and he said yeah. He got a little older. He was pretty old. He'd quit flying, so he was willing to sell it to me. But he cried when it left, I'll tell you that. He really loved it. And so, as a special airplane, because of him, he was just a wonderful person. And the airplane, Nancy soloed this, Johnny did, and they both flew them a lot. This is a 63 150, which had the best combination of the rear omnivision for visibility and the big flaps.
Yeah.
And that was the last year that they had that combination. So it's just the right. That's the only model of 150 they have.
I'll cut this out of the video later, but I wanted to tell you that there is something about some planes that just are very endearing, and it's the way they're trimmed or something. But you know, Ken Poe had 3 150s, and there was one of them, it was actually the oldest one, that it flew like about 8 miles an hour faster than the other two. It would trim up for hands off just beautifully. The controls were just so balanced and easy to move. They were about half as much effort as the other ones. And just the factory, you know, they're putting them together, and maybe something, you know, that one, they just, everything they did right or something, I don't know. But
that's exactly
that plane
right.
was, that one plane was way better than either of the other two.
That's something I gradually became aware of because I would work with Cessna owners, 172s, 150s over the years, and it's amazing how many of them have no idea whether it's a good airplane or a bad airplane. It's just an airplane. They've never compared it to anything else. Some are faster, some are slower, some trim better, but it's all in the handbook. The Cessna maintenance manual tells them how to rig an airplane, the wings.
Yeah, the rigging, that's right.
And to tighten the controls is a rigging job. And most, I have to honestly say, most mechanics pay little to no attention to all that. They just slap it together.
Yeah.
Even at the factory, they didn't do that. You go out there and pick them up, and some will be good, some bad. But over the years, I made owners aware of that, and they would get somebody to re-rig the airplane by instructions, and suddenly it just flew so much better. But the control tension and the rigging of the wings was paramount. The Cessna wings, all Cessna wings, at the rear spar, there's 2 spar fittings where they fasten the fuselage. The rear fitting is an eccentric. It's a bushing that'll rotate with a big nut wrench to turn it, and then in that bushing is a hole which is off center. So as you turn that around, it changes the trailing edge of the wing up and down, rigs them, and all you got to do is follow the instructions.
Yeah, just like an RC plane, exactly.
Yeah, same thing. But most Cessna owners don't even know that. They never even realize that it could be changed.
Yeah, I would get asked once in a while, why do you always go way out of your way to schedule in that airplane? It was the oldest one.
You found out it was the best one.
I would just say, well, if you flew it, you'd know.
Control rigging is just about as big a problem. Mechanics do it carelessly, and it's either too tight or too loose a lot of times. I flew with a guy I wanted to check out in an Aztec one time he had bought, and I was taxiing out with him, and he made his run up and everything and did the control check, but he did the control check like about that much and about that much. And he started going. I said, wait a minute, that's not a control check. All the way.
Yeah.
So I did it all the way and got this thing on wheel all the way over here, and it started back and it hung up. And I see there, we have saved our lives right there.
Yeah.
Well, it wasn't that serious, it turned out, but it was just in the rigging behind the panel where the yoke to the wheels are here,
Right.
and there's a center yoke here, and the cables come up this, and they go out here, and they go around pulleys on each side.
Right.
And on one side of that control system, the pulley here, and there's a little thing called a pulley keeper, cable keeper on each pulley,
Right.
a little metal piece there, and whoever ran that cable had gone right over the metal keeper and didn't round the pulley at all.
no.
It was around it, but way around it. I didn't touch the pulley.
Phew, that's
And we
a lot
were
of
dragging on that when we got there and found that little keeper was worn. It was
I'll
just
bet.
like cable friction. It was worn about halfway through. It's been that way
almost
for
cut
years.
off, yeah.
Nobody had checked those controls since the original airplane was built.
Wow.
So that's still a rigging story to me.
Yeah.
Teach you to do things right. But anyhow, this is a mighty good old 150 there. And we enjoyed it in the Colt together, Johnny and Nancy and I, for a long time there. And okay, there's my fleet that Bob Rust rebuilt, and I sold to an RCer named Doc Edwards over in Mississippi. Yeah, Mississippi. I can't remember the town name on tip of my tongue. Anyhow, he bought the airplane and had it covered and painted after he bought it, and painted this color, and then built an RC fleet just like it out of that big kit that's around. You know, you've seen it.
Yeah.
And he bought this picture was taken at Rome, Georgia. They had an antique flying one time, and he flew over from Mississippi.
Now, I thought maybe I thought your fleet had oversized tires.
I think
Was that
Doc
later?
took them off.
Oh, okay.
Those are oversized, but they're not the big ones I had. I had the
Okay.
32 or 34-inch tires. I think those are about 20-inch, something like that.
Is this the beefed up engine or the before the beefed
Yeah,
up?
this is a big engine. This is a Continental 220,
Yeah.
not the 100 horsepower that's on the Kenner you saw earlier.
Yeah,
You
well,
can see here, it's got a collector ring and everything around it, a lot
Yeah.
of cylinders.
well, a fleet is a pretty light plane anyway, isn't it? And
this,
that's 220
this
on
was
there.
like a an RCer with a 120 engine instead of a
Yeah.
60.
Wow.
They really flew well though.
Good climb rate, huh?
Oh yeah, really, really good climb. We designed it for a glider tow. It's got a glider tow
Oh, I see.
release there. Put the release on and the cable up to the cockpit. And it's still on it when Doc had it. And that's what I wanted with it when we got it. We were into the glider thing pretty seriously. So that's what I fixed it up for.
Now, he built that, the model?
Yeah, Doc Edwards built that.
Yeah. That looks like, what, about a 90?
Doc was a good RCer. He flew competition a long time, and then he became part of the AMA's judging team that go around the country and judge all the AMA contests.
Yeah.
He was considered to be an expert at that. And
I bet you regret selling that one.
well, I can't find any fault with my thinking at the time, but since then I would sure like to have had it again. Yeah. I don't look with fault at many of my decisions, but in retrospect they were not perfect. Put it that way. You always get smarter as you get older, but circumstances change.
Yeah.
Where am I? I'm lost. That's another picture of the Colt.
Same picture of the Colt, okay.
I'm just going, oh, there's your Apache again.
Now, that's the one that was a derelict.
Yeah,
And it had three or some of the mods were the
windows and dorsal.
dorsal fin, the third window, and a new engine. And it was in really bad shape, but you flew it home anyway.
Yeah.
Looks nice there.
The only thing that wasn't in bad shape were the engines. Even though that engine that was later changed was old, it ran fine, didn't give me any trouble. I flew it with that engine for, I guess, 4 or 5 years before Wallace changed that engine, so
Okay.
it was fine. But it was high time, and Wallace was always for buying new radios and new engines.
And Wallace was half owner of this plane?
Yeah. He was full owner when this picture was made. After it
Okay.
got painted, before it got painted. He was full owner.
Okay.
He spent, I believe I paid $6,000 for that derelict on the pilot Rome. And I don't think we spent, I just bought it then, and he later paid me half of that back and owned half of it. And I think by the time I cleaned it up, fixed everything I felt was necessary, I probably had $7,000 or $8,000 in it. But Wallace did all the rest of this, the paint and the interior and everything, and he had about $25,000 in it when he sold it. He sold it for only $25,000 to Jim Karlovic.
Well, pardon me for saying so, but I think an Apache without the dorsal fin looks better.
Do you really?
Yeah, I don't think that makes it
I
look
don't know
better.
why. Dorsal fin is just have a certain appeal to me, so I like
Yeah.
it. I guess Wallace liked it too, because it certainly wasn't necessary, but we just put it on there. Probably $200 or $300 cost. That was a mighty good old airplane. I do think the rear window made it look better though.
Yeah, that looks good.
This window was, back edge of the second window was rounded on the original. We had to cut that out and cut this hole completely, put that window kit in there. I did all that up at John's. Then there's Super Cub that I owned. That's 26 AC. It was 26, but we put the AC on it, got it changed to AC for Albert Carlisle, because Albert and I were partners on this airplane.
Is that the one that was later maroon red?
No,
Okay.
this is the paint job we put on it. We bought this airplane, Albert and I saw an ad that line of paper for the Georgia State Patrol selling surplus Super Cubs. So Albert said, you know, I've always wanted to fly a Super Cub. I said, well, Albert, let's just go down and get one of them. So we went down to Fulton County where they were stored and looked at the records and everything and found an airplane there. And I forgot now, I think we paid $8,000 for that. Back in the 50s, so that wasn't too bad for a Super Cub then, in storage and high time. So we bought it, flew it back to Fulton, took it apart, took it down to Albert's shop, and stripped the covering off. And we're going to refurbish the interior, you might say, but after we stripped the covering off, we found out this was except for the covering, it was an absolute perfect airplane. It had been owned originally by the Italian Air Force. They bought a whole bunch of Super Cubs, and they flew it probably 200 hours in 20 years or something like that.
Wow.
And certainly hadn't worn it out, and they had maintained it absolutely original, just perfect. One of the big things on all Cubs is the spiral gear. Spiral tube with a gear around it that jacks the stab up and down when you roll the trim. In this airplane, that assembly back in the tail had a ball of grease that big around it.
Jeez.
It was absolutely impervious to
5 pounds of grease.
salt
in your
water
tail.
corrosion, which is we thought by coming to Italy we were going to find all kind of problems in there.
Yeah.
Well, there wasn't a spot of corrosion on the whole airplane, metal anywhere. And that thing with grease, it just greased and everything. So the airplane was really an excellent Super Cub. So we recovered it and painted it. Johnny Dunn laid out on his pattern, thin tissue pattern that he makes with his camera that he can take a picture and expand it onto a big surface on a wall, like a big wall, and that'll show the exact size of this pattern. We got it from, so it's the original Piper design that Johnny changed for us and did with his punch thing. And he punches that with a tool that punches little holes as you go along the line. And then he takes a powder bag and hits that against the wall, and it leaves those little dots along. So you got a line under it that you can paint by. It's his method of making big paintings. So he did that for us, and I laid out the brown paper covering and tape it. I taped that whole paint job by myself completely, numbers and all. And JB did the spraying for me. I've never been good at spraying, so JB sprayed the color and everything for me. And Albert and I flew that airplane for a long time. We flew it a couple of times up to Pat Hartness's RC field in Greenville that we've talked about where Triple Tree is. Went up there with it. In fact, that's where this picture was made, because there's the other cub that came up there too. Another RCer had a cub. So this picture was made up at Triple Tree. One of the things about the only other thing about what I do on this cub was the skylight, which goes from here up to the back of the spar right here, is one piece molded plastic.
Okay.
It was very clouded, just clouded plexiglass from exposure, I guess. And I took that thing home and took rubbing compound and rubbed on that thing for seemed like a month to get it cleared up, but got it perfectly shiny. So that was back to best condition, you might say.
Yeah.
At the time, I really wanted to do all the rest of the Alaskan mods, like this guy in Georgia's doing now to the Super Cub, the red Super Cub. He's modified and got all these things. It had a battery access door here and move this bar across the horizontal bar to get access to the baggage compartment. Quite a few mods back in here, as well as the engine and landing gear. The Alaskan mod lengthens the landing gear to get the angle up, so with enough power you get that thing take off sooner. That's the Alaskan system. And the bore prop, all that's what he's doing to that one. We wanted to do it this, but just didn't want to spend the money. So
Well, just like the Champ was the next generation of tandem light planes to the J3, was the Super Cub same to the Champ? Did it feel and fly better and have more desirable characteristics over the Champ?
I think most people with experience in both would say, yeah, that the Super Cub was a bigger, better Champ, but it's not true. It was bigger and better, all right, bigger and better in a lot of ways, but it didn't fly as good. Cub airfoil section and stability factor is not as good as the Champ. Never was, and this one isn't. Super Cub's not either. The PA-12 is, for instance. It's very unusual, but it has the same wing but different tail. I don't know what did the difference. Never have been able to figure out a Super Cruiser why it's so good. But this airplane flies fine, but it can't compare with an airplane like a Champ. There's just qualities there that aren't in this. This flies so good and everybody likes it because the big engine it goes vroom.
Yeah.
Everybody loves that.
Yeah.
And it's tough. You can bounce it all around, it don't hurt it. It'll carry weights, all that, and you can solo it from the front. But for basic quality of flying, it's not there. That's okay. You love Super Cubs for what they are, not what they might be.
Right.